All right, welcome to Glassblowing, everyone. These series of videos have been made in creation for the CSM Glassblowing class in order to provide you another outlet on which you can learn how we do different things in our shop. Now, this first video is going to be going over some of the fundamental aspects of what we make, specifically caterpillars. However, the big things we're going to be touching on are jacklines and marvering, which are truly what caterpillars are meant to show you. The first thing will be marvering, and there's a couple different ways that you can marver depending on where you want your glass to go. Your initial kind of marver, which you see right here, is your initial passes, which stiffens up sides, helps you pull a little bit of glass off, but for the most part is helping you even out that gather. You see it going into a pull marver as you're sliding that punty from the top of the marver down to the edge, where you're using the friction from the metal table on the glass and pulling it across. Here you can see another fresh gather. You're evening out the sides first, doing quick airplane passes, really making sure you're pressing down uniformly. You're going on completely horizontal. Once you finish doing that, you start your pull marver to get some of that glass to come off the tip and forming that nice cylinder that we're really going for. Now, there's a couple of other cases where you're going to be using different shapes or different styles of marvering. One of which is a pull marver going into a push marver. So say you're doing a short piece or you're working on a starter bubble, which you'll hit later. What you'll do is you'll do the opposite of a pull marver, where you push from the bottom of the marver upwards, and that's a good way to either prevent elongation or make your bubble or gather a little bit shorter. Another way to get it a little bit shorter as well is letting gravity work in your favor, and that's where what you'll end up doing is holding your punty vertical, which you'll see up against the edge. So you pull your glass off initially so you get a good amount, maybe you got too much off, and then you angle that, pointing your punty up, and you let that glass fall back on. Here's not a super great example because we're a little bit off center. You want to be completely on center when you do this. Otherwise, you're going to have to slow your rotation, overcorrect, or things like that. You'll see it better in the next clip of what we're kind of looking for. But if you see those little sides ballooning out, that's kind of what you're going for. So this is another fresh gather, like I said, and you can see that staying more on center as you're turning. The glass is falling a little bit back further onto the punty, and then you're slowly working your way from that upwards angle back to horizontal so you can start equalizing all those sides, which will eventually help you keep your piece on center and go into some further step. All right, y'all, so let's make a caterpillar. I have a freshly marvered bit of glass right here. I've gone to the glory, given it some more heat so I can start modifying it. Caterpillars are effectively jackline practice. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting jacklines at sequential points along this marvered piece of glass so that we create little segments, so we have a cute little caterpillar. First, we're putting in that head segment just because that is the furthest up point on the glass. It's going to be what cools down the fastest, and it's going to be a good comparison for how big we are going to want to make our final jackline. You see I put in the second segment similar to how I put in the first one, really making sure that my jacks are straight up and down, completely vertical, and the two blades are in line with each other. If they're not, what'll happen is you'll get either a corkscrew jackline, which isn't good for when we're moving on to later pieces where the jackline is truly being put in to break off the piece, which is what you're going to be seeing here with the final jackline. I do take a brief pause to use some tweezers to put in eyes, because I think it makes the caterpillar look cuter. I touch up those little bits that I've already done, as when you put it in the hole to get more heat, you'll lose some of the definition that you've already put into the caterpillar. But then I go straight back to our final segment, which is where I'm going to be putting in the deepest jackline. The purpose of putting in a deeper jackline, especially in future pieces where you're only putting in one jackline for your final breakoff, is you want to make sure that you're thinning out the glass and creating such a thermal temperature differential at that point that it's going to want to break off. You're introducing higher stresses to that specific location so that when you give it a tap to break it off your punty, it'll pop off at your specified spot, or, of course, a jackline. So whenever you're making a caterpillar, this final location is going to be what you want to make to be the smallest, as well as it's going to be the place where you want to have made the most contact with your jacks throughout the process of your piece. Or if you've already equalized your temperature, such as through flassing or getting new heat, you want to make sure that that is the point that has most recently touched glass after equalizing heat. You'll see I touched up the jackline, I touched up some of the other segment jacklines just to make sure that they were stiff, and then I'm going back to the hole for a quick flash since I've touched other parts of this piece with metal. But after that flash, I go straight to the break-off table. I put my butter knife, super high-tech I know, up against that jackline to reintroduce it to cold metal, really stress it out. I make sure to do a full rotation before I give slight pressure on the top of the head into the fiberfrax, give it a tap, and it breaks off nice and even. I give it a good stressing out, and then I give it a quick flame polish with a torch. Pretty much this is just to make sure that there's no jagged edges. It smooths out a little bit better. You truly won't get a proper flame polish on a caterpillar just because it's a little bit more rounded. But once again, caterpillars are really just practice for jacklines, and just teaching you the basic fundamentals of glassblowing. You'll see our little 3-segmented caterpillar right there with a little bit of a rough break off, but then we bring it straight to the annealer so that we are able to bring it down to temperature slowly so the whole piece itself doesn't thermal shock. And that's how you make a caterpillar, one of the first basic pieces that we make here in the shop. Thanks for watching, and good luck.